Legend of Ben Hall is a 2016 independent Australian feature film written and directed by Matthew Holmes, based on the true story of Benjamin Hall, a 19th century Australian outlaw. But if you've been following me, you already knew that. You'd also know that I've been waiting for this film with bated breath, and I finally got the opportunity to see it last Friday for its Victorian premiere. Now, it's pretty common for a film to generate hype and be a massive disappointment. And The Legend of Ben Hall most certainly does not fall into that category. I can say without a moment's hesitation that this is the definitive bushranger film. In fact, I would even venture to suggest that this is one of the greatest biopics I've ever seen. And here are some of the reasons why. Peter Sylvester's award-winning cinematography is an absolute feast for the eyes. Whether it's sweeping landscapes or an intimate close-up, each shot is immersive, almost like something you would find on the walls of an art museum. It is clear that Holmes and Sylvester worked together brilliantly, with the meticulously planned storyboards by the director being realised almost verbatim. This level of connection is vital to the success of the visuals of a film, and on this level even the most cinema illiterate person can appreciate the quality of the work on offer here. The score to The Legend of Ben Hall was composed and produced by Ronnie Minder, and what he's produced transcends anything by the likes of Junkie XL. I would put it up on the level of, say, Hans Zimmer. The recurring motifs perfectly capture the epic nature of the story as well as the tragedy. Powerhouse pieces like the Araluen Escort and the Battle of Jugyong get the blood pumping, while he yanks masterfully on heartstrings with Last Goodbyes and The Morning of May 5th. I made sure to get a CD of the soundtrack as soon as I was able, and every time I've listened, I've had consistent chills and a lump in my throat. If there is any justice in this world, Ronnie Minder has a great future ahead of him. Now, I've spoken in the past about how excited I was for the cast. In my opinion, this casting is perfect, both in terms of the talent of the actors and in terms of how the cast resemble their historical counterparts. Jack Martin is brilliant as the stoic and tortured Ben Hall. He perfectly captures the struggle of a man clasping onto the last vestiges of what he believes makes him respectable or capable of redemption. His no killing rule clearly weighs heavily on him as he resists the temptation to cross his own boundaries. His drive to make sure his son is raised properly, in spite of who his father is, moves Hall's journey along and shapes his actions more than anything else. And with Martin's portrayal, it's all about the eyes. You are not going to find a more intense pair of eyes on screen, I guarantee. It is absolutely fantastic to see that level of immersion coming through. Jamie Coffer is amazing as Johnny Gilbert, cackling and posturing and bringing much levity through our proceedings. He is responsible for a lot of the comedy moments in the film, and he pulls off gags with aplomb. His over-the-top performance absolutely spot on. Johnny Gilbert was a maniac, and he was always known as being flashy and being a showman. This is absolutely the way that anyone reading an account of Johnny Gilbert would perceive him to be, and it's quite clear that he's a bit of an audience favourite as a result. A standout for me was William Lee as John Dunn. He captures Dunn's youthful naivety perfectly and is quickly endearing to the audience, making his character arc that much more tragic. The incident at the Collector Hotel being one in particular that affected me. Joanne Dobbin's Biddy Hall is strong and maternal, courageous enough to stand up to her notorious ex-husband to protect her son. The development of her relationship to Ben is key to the success of the story, and Dobbin pulls the transition off effortlessly, never breaking character and portraying Biddy with a truthfulness and empathy often lacking in portrayals of her in texts or folklore. Adam Wilson as Goobang Mick Connolly is another real standout for me. Wilson is a longtime friend and collaborator with Holmes, the Jason Mewes to Holmes' Kevin Smith, if you will. This role seems to have been made for Wilson, because he nails the complexity of Connolly's character as if it was second nature. Connolly's duplicity emerging as he endures the upheaval to his family that Hall brings whenever he appears. I could easily talk about the cast for a whole video, but there are other things that I need to cover. I will note, however, that I enjoyed every performance in this film, and can see great success for cast members like Lauren Grimson, Angus Pellicui, Pia Grace Moon, Erica Field, and Jordan Fraser Trumbull. Matthew Holmes had the unenviable task of condensing Ben Hall's last 9 months into a film that is around 2 hours long, potentially impeded by his goal of being totally accurate to history. To streamline things for audience comprehension, some characters and situations were modified slightly, making this around about 99% accurate. Much of the dialogue is taken from historical records, the rest being period accurate, expletives and all. The attention to detail and the authenticity of the storytelling is what I have waited for pretty much my whole life to see in a biopic, let alone one about bushrangers. I had a little fangasm when Frank Gardner was name-dropped and when there were nods to events like the Agawa Rocks robbery. That universe building was fantastic. The building sense of dread as the film progresses is powerful and brutal. As the dates got closer to the end, I found myself getting quite anxious, owing in no small part to knowing what was coming. The characters are fully rounded and presented without signifiers telling the audience who to side with. The number one thing I love about this telling of the story. It is up to the viewer to decide how they feel about Ben Hall and the people around him, and this can be very challenging, I would imagine, for some moviegoers that might not be expecting to think when going to see a Pavlova Western. This is the genius of this film. It educates, entertains, and provokes thought. Special mention needs to be made here of Peter Bradley, who was the historical consultant on the film. Without his input, it would have been a vastly different product. There are so many things I love in this movie. I love the costumes. The fact that the majority of the characters have Australian accents is historically accurate, by the way. I love the little touches, like Ben Hall's limp and the fact that they made sure that he was carrying his trademark Tranter revolver. I love that everyone on this film had a passion for it, and it shows in every element. I love the fact that this film hit me emotionally very intensely. I do not cry in films. I can list about 2 or 3 exceptions where I cry once in the film. I found myself crying in no less than 3 different instances during this film. I was quite shocked by that, in fact. This is a film I can't wait to see again. It is truly the king of the bushranging films, and a lot of historical dramas and biopics can learn a lot from this film. If you want to see it, check out The Legend of Ben Hall on social media, particularly Facebook, for information on which cinemas are showing it near you. I'll put some of that information up on my Facebook page as well. Unfortunately, the nature of cinema in Australia is such that cinemas just won't touch our films unless they have a big marketing budget, and as a result, many may miss out on seeing this film. So how do we combat this? Contact your local cinema. Tell them you want to see this. Make your voice heard. Get a group together. Say you've got 30 people that want to go and watch this movie. See how quickly they go about trying to organise a screening. There's much riding on the success of this film, including 2 more films in the series, The Legend of Frank Gardner and The Legend of John Vane, which would employ dozens of professionals trying to find a place in the film industry. This movie was a labour of love. Nearly all of the people who worked on this film volunteered their services and their time to make this thing a reality. And that's the real key here. The passion comes from the people wanting to make this film. It wasn't just a job, it was a labour of love. And it shows. I give The Legend of Ben Hall a perfect score, 10 out of 10. And I strongly encourage you to support this film. You won't regret it.